Hey everyone, Paul here, and in this video I'm going to take you through a couple of things that I've seen on the interwebs that have really caught my attention and have made my own workflows so much simpler and sort of like added some things to my skill set, which I think you guys might get a lot out of. So let's jump in and let's have a quick look at what I've been watching. So the first thing I found recently is this outline helper for Blender 2.8, and this basically creates line work in a method known as the inverted hull. Now, to basically explain what inverted hull does, so if I was to take this mesh and assign it a second material, let's call this outline, and we set the color of this material to black. And under the material settings, we set backface culling on. Then we have to add a solidify modifier to it. And we assign the material a second slot. And we flip its normals. Now let's get into some sort of a rendered mode here to see what's going on. And then when we increase the thickness, you can actually see that it does indeed outline this object. But you can see that all those steps are a bit of an involved process. So what this add-on actually does is automate all of that process. And for that, it's worth kicking Feline Entity a couple of bucks just for that use. Now, here is how it works. After you download the add-on, you go to your preferences, add-ons, and you search for outline helper and you enable it. And let's get the solidify off there, and let's delete that second material as well. So we've only got the first material here. And I'm just going to hit F3 and I'm going to search for set outline. Here it is. Okay. And there it is. It's already done it in one quick and easy step. Now, if you want to get a few of those controls, all you have to do is hit your N key, and you can see that the outline helper has its own unique tab because it's an add-on, right? And you can do things like add set outline, adjust outline, remove outline, all that sort of stuff without having to worry about this first step. But you can see already what it's done. It's created a second material for us. It's also set backface culling on that material. It's also set a new vertex group for us, and it's applied the solidify modifier with basic settings that you could even go in and adjust these. But it can do things like adjust the outline here by clicking on that without even having to go there, and you could sort of increase and decrease this outline right there in the dialog box, or you can even just go into the solidify modifier and modify them right there. Now, there is one caveat to the outliner, and that is with non-manifold meshes, I believe they're called, or sort of inside-out meshes, such as, say you had a room and you wanted to sort of like have the lines in the corners of this room. If we were to say, let's say, apply this material, and then we wanted to add set outline on this particular object, this isn't really going to work because the outliner here only works on the, if it's a solid object. So, this requires a different solution for that sort of stuff, but for things that are solid and are, basically on the whole consistent meshes, it will put this solidify on the outside just fine. Now, the next thing I came across is called the BIS Blender add-on, the Blender Interplanetary Storage. And essentially, this is an online materials library, and it's pretty useful, but this isn't why I downloaded this particular add-on. Now, it is a free add-on, and if you want to take a look at the material features and all that sort of stuff, go to the add-on website, follow all the instructions, so on and so forth. It's well worth a look, but here is why I downloaded it. There's a part of this BIS add-on which is extremely useful when you're creating node groups, and that's something that is definitely something that I do a lot of. So let's just make a very simple material here. Okay, let's say we have a diffuse shader, and let's say we've got a glossy shader on that as well. Okay, so let's say that this is going to go between diffuse and glossy, and so let's also give this a bit of a color. We'll give the glossiness maybe more purpley type look, and we've got this factor slider which goes between diffuse and glossy. Now we're going to sort of group these all together. We go Control G and we make ourselves a little group. Now usually the way you create inputs for a group is inside of the group. Now if you're outside that node group, you just click it, you hit tab. Inside of the node group, you go to the node setting, you hit N, and you can see inputs and outputs. And you can either add them via this plus sign here, but what it does is it creates a default value with an infinite minimum, infinite maximum, and then you're basically set to connect these inputs to whatever fields you want. The other way you do it is if you connect an unconnected input to a color, then it will default and it will create a color node based on the settings that you connect it to, including the default value for the color. And if you select something like a factor or roughness or whatever, it takes on the properties of what you connect it to, and that's basically the only way that you can create these inputs so that on the outside you have these sliders such as, okay, let's say that this factor we can now bring back to 0, and the color for the diffuse we can change using this input. Okay, we can change the roughness of the glossiness, for instance. These are just some connections that I made, okay? But they're all made inside of the node group. Now, what if you want to control and what if you want to assign these inputs and outputs before you actually connect them? That's where this add-on comes in really, really handy. So I'm going to go to Preferences, BIS, Material, BIS. I'm going to enable this. Now, whenever you've got a shader node or a compositing node, you hit the N key, you now have this new tab that says BIS. And this little window here is extremely, extremely useful. You now have input output to node group. You can make an input or an output node by clicking the type you want to input or output. Okay, so let's say we wanted to do the color and we want to make an input. There's an input color made. Let's say we want to have a floating integer. Okay, this has even got handles on it. So there's that. And what if we wanted an integer so that the input is in whole integers? We can do something like this. Now, when you go inside the node group, now you can go over to node and you can connect them up. So let's say that this one here, okay, we got to get rid of that first input there, sorry. This one here is the color, so we've got to call this color. And we can connect this to the color inputs for both. We want to make this one the roughness. And let's say we wanted to make this glossiness either on or off, and we connect that to the factor there. Okay, now we've got these controls that we created. So we can create a nice blue diffuseness. We can mess around with the roughness there, and we can either have it glossy or diffuse. So glossy, we can have, we can even, let's make this roughness integer 0 to 1. Roughness has also got to go to the glossy as well. So we can have variation on the roughness input. We can have either diffuse or glossy, depending on what we want, and we can even change the color. And now, even if someone doesn't have this add-on, they can use your node groups with all of these inputs just as they would any other node group. So I would urge you to take a look at this link, and if you like the material library, follow the instructions, and maybe, again, kick them a few bucks for the plugin. It's a really, really simple plugin to use. So I hope you got a lot out of that content that I showed. There might have been stuff that you've seen before, there may not have been. As always, you can give me some suggestions on stuff that you've seen, and I might sort of put it in the next month's video, or whenever I do one of these, what I'm watching videos again. And of course, follow the links in the show notes to see more of the wonderful stuff that these people have been producing, and subscribe to their channels, download their stuff, all that sort of stuff, because this stuff is really useful to me, and I think it could be really useful to you. Okay, thanks guys for watching. This is Paul signing off. Bye for now.